The following review contains significant plot spoilers. Please watch at your own risk.
Might mention it is 007, but a perfect marksman isn't really supposed to shoot his own boss.
Check the replay.
Die Another Day is the 20th official Bond film and was released in 2002, starring Pierce Brosnan in his fourth and final outing as James Bond 007. The film opens up with the same old gun barrel, except this time when Bond shoots the gun at the screen, the bullet comes straight at you in CGI fashion. Yeah, let's just forget about this stupidness. Anyways, after that we get right into an action-packed pre-title sequence that shows Bond infiltrating a North Korean military base under an alias where a Colonel Moon, played by William Lee, is illegally trading African conflict diamonds for weaponry. Moon's henchman Zhao, played by Rick Yoon, discovers that Bond is a British agent and all hell breaks loose. Bond detonates an explosive in which Zhao's face becomes disfigured by diamond fragments, and Moon attempts to escape on a hovercraft. Bond pursues Moon in a second hovercraft, and Moon is presumed dead after falling down a waterfall. Bond is then captured by North Korean soldiers and imprisoned by the Colonel's father, General Moon. We then get the ever-so-terrible title song sung by Madonna. I have nothing to say except that it is bad, really, really bad. After that atrociousness, we see a beaten and tortured Bond 14 months later. Bond is traded for Zhao in a prisoner exchange and is sedated and taken to meet M, who informs him that his status as a 00 agent is suspended due to her belief that he may have leaked information under duress. Bond, of course, being the badass that he is, easily escapes from confinement and travels to Hong Kong, where he learns from his contact that Zhao is in Cuba. After arriving in Havana, Bond meets NSA agent Giacinta Johnson, aka Jinx, played by Halle Berry. I don't know if she's worse than Denise Richards, but nevertheless, both are really bad actresses. Anyways, Bond follows Zhao and Jinx to a gene therapy clinic where patients can have their appearances altered through DNA restructuring. Bond finds Zhao, but he flees in a helicopter, leaving behind a pendant filled with conflict diamonds bearing the crest of a British billionaire, Gustav Graves, played by Toby Stephens. Bond meets Graves along with his assistant Miranda Frost, played by Rosamund Pike, who is an undercover MI6 agent. There is an exciting fencing duel between Bond and Graves, and afterwards Bond gets an invite to Iceland for a scientific demonstration. Shortly after this, M restores Bond's 00 status and offers assistance in the investigation. In Iceland, Graves unveils a new orbital mirror satellite, Icarus, which is able to focus solar energy on a small area and provide year-round sunshine for crop development. At night, Jinx infiltrates Graves' command center inside the Ice Palace, but is captured by Zhao. Bond rescues her, and after seeing Zhao talking with Graves, realizes that Colonel Moon is still alive. Moon has used the gene therapy technology to change his appearance, assuming the identity of Gustav Graves. Bond confronts Graves, but Miranda Frost arrives to reveal herself as the traitor and the one who exposed Bond in North Korea. Bond escapes and returns to his Aston Martin to rescue Jinx. Zhao pursues him in his own gadget-laden car, a Jaguar, but is ultimately killed when an ice chandelier drops down on top of him. Bond rescues Jinx from drowning, and the two travel to North Korea and stow away on Graves' cargo plane. Graves reveals his true identity to his father and the purpose of the Icarus satellite, to cut a path through the Korean demilitarized zone with concentrated sunlight, allowing North Korean troops to invade South Korea and reunite the countries through force. Horrified, General Moon tries to stop the plan but is killed by his own son. Seeing this unfold, Bond attempts to shoot Graves but misses and hits the fuselage, causing the plane to rapidly descend. Bond engages in a fight with Graves while Jinx ends up fighting Frost. Jinx manages to stab and kill Frost while Graves gains the upper hand on Bond. Graves attempts to escape in a parachute, but Bond opens the parachute, causing the slipstream to pull Graves out of the plane and into its engine, killing him and disabling the Icarus beam. Bond and Jinx escape the disintegrating plane by using a helicopter in the cargo hold and make it to safety. The film ends with Bond and Jinx in a remote cabin, having obtained Graves' stash of diamonds. Pierce Brosnan manages to do a good enough job in this film and manages to take the film seriously, which is a pretty hard feat to accomplish. Brosnan was originally signed on for a fifth Bond film, but for whatever reason was let go in 2004. After seeing this film, I believe that it was a good idea, since the films were beginning to get out of control, and they definitely needed a new actor to fill the role as Brosnan was getting a bit old. The main villain of the film is Gustav Graves, played by Toby Stephens. To say the least, Graves is a very unmemorable villain and doesn't get a satisfying enough end. The plot twist with the Faceless is pretty dumb. It's also pretty silly how he has a suit that makes him look like a friggin' Terminator or something. Stephens does give a great acting performance, which is the best he can do with the role. M and Moneypenny return, being played by the same actors since GoldenEye. Q also returns, but instead being played by John Cleese, who played R in the previous film. He makes a good replacement, although this is the last time we will see him. I also kind of enjoyed the many references made to previous films, like in Q's workshop you get to see many old gadgets like the crocodile submersible from Octopussy, and the jetpack from Thunderball, to name a few. We get a few very minor allies who briefly show up, including Mr. Chang and Raoul. Michael Madsen also appears in a small role as the opposite number of M. There are a few henchmen / henchwomen in this film, with only two standing out. Zhao is quite an interesting and very memorable henchman with a very memorable appearance. I do find it strange how he randomly has a gadget-filled Jaguar laying around, though. One of the highlights of the film is Rosamund Pike as Femme Fatale of Miranda Frost. This chick is hot. The plot twist involving her is pretty good, too. Pike is definitely the better Bond girl of the film, which brings us to Halle Berry as Jinx. Berry is most certainly hot, but she cannot act to save her life. It also doesn't help that they try to make her a strong and independent character, which is hard to believe. What's even harder to believe is that at one point they were considering making a spin-off series featuring her as the main character. Yeah, right. Thank God that didn't happen. Overall, Jinx is one of the worst Bond girls, along with the likes of Christmas Jones, Stacey Sutton, and Mary Goodnight. Lee Tamahori directs this particular film and doesn't bring anything to the table except for very annoying slow-mo segments and crappy CGI effects. Tamahori is most certainly the worst Bond director. David Arnold returns again to compose the score and does a great job. It's just a shame about the Madonna song, though. The main plot and scheme of the film is almost a direct rehash of previous films like Diamonds Are Forever and Moonraker. That is about all I can say about that. There are many action sequences in this film, and they are all exciting and action-packed. My favorite ones are the PTS, fencing duel, and the car chase. The only thing that ruins the car chase is the fact that Bond's Aston Martin can turn invisible. Yes, you heard me correctly, invisible. To be honest, I find this film more harder to take seriously than Moonraker. Lastly, the locations are all exotic and beautiful, and the set design for the Ice Palace in Iceland is magnificent. Okay, now I'm finally going to talk about what I think of the film as a whole. I'm not going to be like the majority and bash this film completely because there are some positives among all of the crap. In brief, the whole film up until Bond gets to the Ice Palace is great. After that, the film plummets into the realms of outlandishness and stupidness that will leave you shaking your head. It's hard to take scenes with invisible cars and windsurfing seriously, especially with the latter having terrible CGI effects. On the other hand, this is definitely not a boring film. I really liked how Bond actually got captured and imprisoned, and that idea is one of the coolest ever used in the series, but unfortunately it is discarded after maybe 15 minutes. It really bothers me because there was so much hidden potential in this film, but in the end they just decided to go all out. The film is also littered with references to every single Bond film up to that point, since this film came out on the 40th anniversary of Bond in film. Many people say that these references are distracting, but it's great to see some continuity. Regardless, overall Die Another Day is definitely near the bottom of the barrel. The first half simply cannot hold up the film on its own. I find it extremely hard to recommend this film even to a casual moviegoer. I give Die Another Day an unfavorable 6 out of 10. Now, as per usual, are my likes and dislikes, starting with my likes. The idea of Bond getting captured and held prisoner is a cool and refreshing idea. The action sequences are done very well and remain exciting. Rosamund Pike as Miranda Frost steals the show with her performance. The fencing duel between Bond and Graves is possibly the best part of the whole film. And lastly, even though a bit ridiculous, the Ice Palace is incredibly beautiful. And now for my dislikes. Toby Stephens as Gustav Graves makes a remarkably forgettable villain. Halle Berry as Jinx makes an atrocious Bond girl. The invisible Aston Martin is silly and very hard to take seriously. The CGI effects, especially during the windsurfing scene, are very, very laughable. And lastly, the rehashed plot certainly doesn't do any favors for the film's already shattered integrity. Well, everyone, the Brosnan era is over. Next week we will move on to the first film to star the current Bond, Daniel Craig. You will get to hear my thoughts on Craig and his debut film, Casino Royale. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.